Tonight, we continue to follow another natural disaster closer to home. The damage on Mount Charleston is widespread. This is after Tropical Storm Hillary brought those destructive downpours last weekend. Power has since been restored to much of the mountain. Water, though, has not. A number of major roads have been destroyed. Access is being limited right now to first responders and local residents. And the damage was catastrophic for the volunteer fire department, their building, and all the life-saving equipment inside. But the devastation has not stopped them. Those first responders are still working around the clock to meet the needs of the whole community.
My staff's working overtime here, everybody here, because we are keeping our emergency services open on this mountain.
Those who protect and serve amid catastrophic damage don't have a building. The Mount Charleston Fire Protection District, made up of volunteer firefighters, was severely damaged by the storms. The building is unusable. Precious life-saving equipment destroyed. Yet the crews press on, working day and night to help residents who lack water, power, and shelter.
There's about 5 feet of rock and debris inside. They were able to get most of the trucks and the engines out, but the equipment, I think, is what they lost.
Brenda Talley is helping rally folks across southern Nevada to help these firefighters who protect locals and the millions of tourists who come to Mount Charleston, Lee Canyon, and Kyle Canyon.
It's a great group of guys that are there day in, day out. They're there for all the visitors, millions of visitors that come year round. Whether someone gets hurt, gets stuck, a lot of broken arms and broken legs where they're sledding.
The GoFundMe page is meant to help rebuild and restore the facility and equipment that took years to build up. Brenda says they are all victims, too.
These guys that are volunteers, most of them live up here. They were affected greatly by this flood and damage to their own property, and they didn't hesitate. They haven't stopped. I've seen them every day. They've been here at night. They help evacuate people that needed to get down the mountain. They bring in the water, so they've just really been super.
The link to that GoFundMe page is on our website, fox5vegas.com. So those same firefighters are urging visitors, now is not the time to come up to the mountain for your safety.